Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us this late afternoon or evening, depending on where you're based. My name is Lara, I am the Community Manager at ELU, European Leadership University. Before we get started with our webcast today and introducing our panel of experts and guest speakers, I'll quickly tell you a little bit about this series. So ELU is a university focused on tech degrees and bridging the skills gap, especially within the Dutch and wider European market. And for this reason, as a trainer provider, we have seen that there's a little bit of education still to do in the Dutch job markets on especially data science, which is one of our core focus, and also an interest in bringing different people within the field together, both on the recruitment side and those who are working as data professionals themselves. And this is why we have launched this series. This is our second rendition, our second cohort of the Building a Data Science Team series, where we cover different topics like the recruitment and finding data science talent, but also how to successfully manage a team or work with other teams within your organization as a data professional. So today we will be talking about finding data talent, recruiting the data talent, also retaining it, setting up a culture for your data team with a variety of perspectives. So my colleague Christella is here to moderate today's discussion. Now we have, of course, prepared some questions, but should you have any questions yourself, you should also see either a chat or a Q&A box down below in the controls, and you're more than welcome to send us your questions and we'll also go over them within the hour of today. So thank you again for joining, and without further ado, Christella, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lara, for the introduction, and welcome everyone to this panel session on assembling the team. Very excited to welcome our guests here. First of all, we have Teddy Dimitrova, we have Gerben Ostra here, and Marieke Vink. They will all introduce themselves a little bit, but like Lara said, they will all put in a different perspective on assembling a data science team, assembling a great team. How do you do it? Where do you find the people? And how do you keep them on board? So I hope you guys could introduce yourself today, and let me start with Marieke, please.
Yeah, my name is Marieke Vink, and currently I work as a product manager at bol.com, and I work with a team of engineers and data scientists, and our main focus is creating recommendations for the bol.com platform. And before that, I also worked at Marktplaats and at eBay, and I was there the manager of a small data science team. So yeah. Therefore, I think I have a perspective from the hiring end, but also from the receiving end. So what do you do when someone joins your team, and how do you make sure that the people are happy and that you also get the most value out of the team that you put together?
Great, thank you and welcome, Marieke. Good to have you. Teddy, could you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you. My name is Teddy Dimitrova. I work in the last couple of years in the Netherlands as a people and culture advisor. My focus is mostly on scaling up tech teams, including, of course, data scientists as well. I'm working on finding the people, but also sometimes helping companies to retain them. And when it comes to really finding talent, I specialize in terms of diversity. So we're not talking only about the percentage of male-female ratio, but really anything from cognitive diversity to anything that you can think of. And always looking together with the teams how we can improve that. So I think that I can bring up some more knowledge from that side as well to the discussion.
Yes, good to have you. We already said when we were meeting first, like, if it's not already hard enough to do recruitment in the tech or data field, let's include this as well. So yeah, excited to hear more about that. Last but not least, Gerben, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Gerben Ostra. I'm the lead data scientist at Big Data Republic, which is a small consultancy firm in the Netherlands where we have 23 specialist in data science, data engineering, and ML ops. We grew actually the last 5 years from 3 to those 23 people strong. And in it, I also had a lot of influence on the hiring process and the selection process. Currently, I focus a lot on how within Big Data Republic, how we can share knowledge amongst everyone. We're all consultants, we're all the clients. Every Friday we're back, like how can you share your experience with each other to also make it really a team experience. And in the meanwhile, I'm also working at clients the rest of the week, where I'm usually in the tech lead role, in some machine learning engineering teams.
Great. Welcome, Gerben. Yeah, I already mentioned it, but I think we have a really unique combination of people here. We're going to talk with very different perspectives on the same subject. So use their expertise, and as the audience, put your questions in the chat if you want to. The question I want to start with is, what is the biggest lesson that you have learned during your work in building data or tech teams? And maybe you could start with that, Teddy.
Well, there are a lot of lessons. I'm actually writing a book about it, but if I have to think about one thing, it's more of things that I've realized, and it's something that I always tell my clients is we have to start hiring based on the potential of the candidates rather than on what they have written on their CV. And this doesn't mean if it's for data teams or product teams or recruiters or whatever. We've talked about that we want to change that. We really have to start looking further than just what's written on a CV.
Yeah, cool. We'll get back to that actually, about the hiring process and how do you assess a good candidate. What about you, Gerben?
Yeah, I agree that you should really look at like the potential of people, but also think everyone should already contribute something to the team. So what I really like is if you get a team, everyone contributes something, but they have the opportunity to also grow in other directions. And that way you get a good mix. Well, the team can grow. The team can grow further while they're working together. And to be able to grow as a team, of course, also the interpersonal relationship should work out quite well. So, yeah, so you should get the good thing, people with a good skill set in the team, but let them work together, that they can actually share their skill set amongst each other and together find ways to tackle new challenges. But then also a lesson learned is if you're all at the same skill level, then it's hard for the team itself to step up to a next level. So actually I would advise to have more diverse also in experience, that actually the more experienced people can pull the less experienced people up. Actually the less experienced people can bring up new creative contribute on the creative side. Yes, that would be my take on the team.
Yeah, so that's another thing in which you should diversify your team. Great, thank you. Marike, what is your biggest lesson from the last couple of years?
So I really like that last point by Gerben, but I guess even more at the beginning is realizing why you're hiring this data team to begin with. I hope I can say that I've seen it less over the last few years, but a while back, data was all the rage, and it was more, we have data somewhere, so let's hire a team and they will do their AI magic sauce and magic things will happen. That's not how it works. So you need to have some understanding of what is the problem that you're trying to solve, what data do I have, and how can that data help me fix that problem before you start hiring people, because otherwise you might hire someone with exceptional skills that doesn't have the data they need to work with, or maybe you hire someone that knows exactly how to squeeze the data into something usable, but doesn't have the skills to then put it to production or put it to work. So hire with the problem to be solved in mind. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think this is something that I recognize, but I saw Teddy nodding heavily as well.
Yeah.
What were you thinking about?
It's I remember the first time when I had to hire someone for a data team to actually start building a data team, and it was literally the hiring manager would come to me and say, I saw that this other company have a data analyst, so we need to hire one as well. And then my question was, but what is that person going to do? And there were 4 or 5 requirements that would actually combine a data scientist, a data engineer, and a data analyst. And I said, we can't hire 3 people in one. But especially in the startup scale-up environment, it's very difficult because usually when you start hiring specialists like this, you don't know what you're hiring exactly. We ended up in a 6 months runway where we were interviewing anything that we could come across that was looking like what we need. Ended up hiring a data scientist actually instead of analyst. But and then this happened, what just Marika said, like you hire someone that has amazing skills, and that then person can't do their job because they don't have the right data to work with.
Right. Yeah, I think this is, yeah, Gerben, please.
I want to ask, like, it also feels a little bit like in this startup scale-up phase, because that's, I think the setting we're now talking about is also like a chicken and egg problem. When the business doesn't know yet what kind of people they know, what kind of people they need, and actually what people can do with data. But actually, you need a data scientist to actually tell the business what they can do.
Yeah.
But then the business doesn't know data science, so they can't hire a good data scientist because they don't know how a good one looks like.
But then we come also to a moment that is also a little bit of a problem into the whole process. So if you're going to interview someone and that someone is going to tell you, listen, I'm a data scientist. This is this and this and this is what I do with data.
Yeah.
Do you really need that? Then you might also prevent a bad hire or not the right hire. But in the process, very often, what happens very often is just that from the company, there is only questions. They don't actually listen to what the candidate says. And then you end up with not the right hire as well. So I think that you can prevent the chicken and the egg, what you just mentioned, but it's just, you also have to be open for feedback and other people's opinions. And that's sometimes very difficult.
Yeah, and I think you need to find a way to bringing some of the knowledge either by a specialized recruiter or, for example, I think a consultancy party often gets hired to take like the first steps, I think. Is that something you recognize, Gerben, that you're being brought in just to identify what a company needs in terms of data science?
Yeah, yes. Especially in companies we're actually just starting and don't know yet what's possible and what's possible within at that place. We also go as Big Data Public. We go there and have like ideation sessions, brainstorming sessions, actually see where would the data scientist where could data science benefit the company. Find also out what kind of technology there is available. Like do a kind of a scan and some brainstorming actually to kickstart like what actually is a use case you want to solve, and actually are there use cases you actually want to solve with data science, and that way find a better direction. Like is it more engineering approach or is it more analytics or more science, and that way you kickstart the project, and then usually something like that usually is only a few weeks. Actually, within a few weeks you can already know which direction to go, and then you can have a small team taking the first steps. And if it gets some traction, then you can grow the team. And I think then indeed it's helpful to just have consultants because you can hire them. But if it doesn't get traction, if the project doesn't run really well, you also can send them away again. But if it does take off, then you can slowly build a team and also get the internal people for the long-term stability.
Yes. What do you think, Marie? Because I can imagine that from your perspective, you've been working with consultancy firms, perhaps for small projects, and then making the transfer to building your own team.
It is kind of how we approached things at Marktplaats at some point, because we need, like, we're sure we have data that we could be using, but how do you get started? For that, we did indeed hire a company to basically first show a proof of value. So build some kind of small application that just proves that there is data that we can use and that it actually brings value to use it directly on the site. And I think that was a good step. But the tricky bit was then to translate it to, okay, so what does that mean if we want to implement this in the broader site as well? So how do we get it from a proof of concept to something that is ingrained in the way of working of the company?
Yeah, sort of an isolated experiment. Transfer it to the business. Yeah, I think that's a common problem. I'm wondering for you, Marieke, because you've been working as a team manager. What was for you the biggest challenge in hiring the right people for your team?
I think finding the right balance. So Gerben mentioned you need to find the right balance between junior people with a lot of potential to grow and senior people that can actually help these junior people to grow. And what I found very challenging was if you have a starting team for a very senior person, that can also be, well, bluntly, a bit boring, because the problems that you're solving at first may not be the most complex and interesting problems to solve. But you do need someone to take the lead and to really develop, like, okay, hey, we could be using this technique, we could be using this type of data. So finding the right balance between senior enough to take the lead, but junior enough to still be excited about all the things that can be done, that was a big challenge when really starting this team.
Yeah. I can imagine. What about with you, Teddy? You've mostly been working at startups and scale-ups. Is it different then, or do you recognize this?
Well, first of all, it's very difficult to find because what happens usually in a startup scale-up environment is that you would start with interns that would help you do the basic stuff, and then at some point you realize we need to step up the game, we need to hire some seniors. It's very difficult to find a senior in an environment like this, because how do you evaluate this person? And this has been always one of the biggest challenges that I faced, is that how do you interview that person? What questions do you ask? Do you send them a hackerrank, or can you actually ask a senior to do a hackerrank? Isn't that something that they're not supposed to do anymore? And especially if you don't have people in the team that can evaluate this person on the technical level, how do you know you're going to make a good hire? It's very painful.
Right. It's something I actually wanted to because you mentioned in the beginning that one of the lessons you learned is to hire more on potential than on CV. Yeah. But as a recruiter, that's really difficult, because how do you assess that potential? Or not just as a recruiter, but for everyone, how do you assess that potential? Did you find a way to do that?
Well, I'm experimenting a little bit with that. First of all, it's very difficult to actually work with companies and try to change their mind about it, because especially again in the startup scale-up environment, they need someone to come in to be senior enough to do the job on their own, and then you don't trust a junior with a high potential to do that, because probably they don't have the knowledge and they don't have someone that is going to give them the knowledge. So for me, it's experimenting more with, if I look at potential, it's more soft skills and how the person, what's the drive of the person, how have they developed themselves in the past years. But it's still very, how do you call it? You can't touch it. You can't see it. You can't prove it. So it's difficult. I don't have the right formula yet.
Right. What do you think, Gerben?
Yeah. we also had a big public, especially when we just started. We also had a problem like how can we, when you're actually growing and starting even as a consultancy company, you can't just hire only senior people. You also get a lot of people you think, well, there's something in this person. I really think he's going to make it. But then you need to also specify, because otherwise, if you hire everyone who seems legit, then you'll have a big team with just the masses of everyone who calls themselves data scientists. And maybe people are friendly and amicable and good talking, but actually can't transform it to technical to the technical part. So what I always focus on is everyone has some experience, and it could be at the university, it could also be at their internship, but that the things they do, they need to do it really well. So if I know that they are really understanding what they do, what they did, why they do it, create it in high quality. Actually, you can, even if you don't know that project, you can also quite ask details about how they did it. If they really can explain it really well, use more advanced techniques, then you know, okay, if this person can do this thing really well, he's apparently learning fast enough to do that, then I assume I can also learn new things. So new skills, new techniques, and then okay, there's potential to grow. Well, if for a senior, you expect he already did all those things.
Yeah. Right, and is it then more about the coding that someone produces, or what you say, like the process that they go through in making their decisions and presenting?
I think more their mindset. If they're eager to learn and eager to understand how things work and eager to improve themselves, you can usually see that in how they did the previous projects. And even if their coding is not like high quality, but actually they see that their coding is not high quality and they are willing to learn, and you say, okay, this will go to the right direction. But if people are only focusing on, okay, I've got this, I need to pass this test at the clients, then it's okay, there's like, then you can game the system to pass the test, whether it's at university or at the client to get the project done. But if he's, no, he passed the test, but in the meanwhile, the things other people couldn't see, he also put a lot of attention on that. That's also really, okay, this is someone who likes to learn and grow.
Yeah, and this is exactly what I mean. What you just described, most of the companies that I've worked with, or my colleagues, other recruiters are working with, they're not looking at those things. They're looking at, is the code clean? Did he use this and this and that? And then they would just disqualify someone from the process just because of the fact that it was not up to their standards, without actually asking this person for explanation, like, why did you do that? There are a lot of assumptions and a lot of things that don't let the candidate show their true potential in the points that you just mentioned.
And I'm wondering, Teddy, as a recruiter, how do you sort of break through that?
So one of the first things that I do is I go through an interview training with the managers that I'm going to work with, and sometimes it's needed, sometimes it's not needed, but I really need to make sure that whenever we interview, first of all, we know what we are looking for, and second of all, we're interviewing in the proper way. And I'm not talking necessarily here about a bias or how do you ask questions and what kind of methodologies you use, but about how are you going to make sure that you really got out the right information out of the candidate, and you gave the candidate the room to prove themselves and show who they really are. 9 out of 10 times when I look at feedback written by managers or interviewers, it's, I have the feeling that this person is not going to fit my team. You can't be hiring on feelings. You have to have objective feedback that is written on facts. I saw that, I heard that, I've asked, is this true? And the candidate confirmed it. Based on this, I can conclude that. And this is one of the ways how you can actually try to improve at least the process.
Right.
In that sense.
That makes sense, I think. So you're sort of really working with the hiring managers to make sure you're on the same page and that the process is clear.
Yeah, it sounds very easy. I have to say that it's a very, very long process and it's a lot of back and forth and it doesn't always work, but the effort is there.
Yeah, it's a good start, I would say.
Yeah.
There's actually a question coming in from the chat, and I thought maybe it fits the discussion because we're talking about potential, and maybe Marika, you could answer it. So what are the signs of someone who has exceptional potential? Jesse is asking.
I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer this one, actually. So because
what is exceptional potential?
Yes,
right.
Well, there's that.
That's the question. What is exceptional potential? Because for different people, that means different.
Yeah, so maybe what I could answer maybe is exceptional potential from my perspective, which is so I work as a product manager. So what I care about is to have a data scientist that isn't just technically very good, but that also keeps an eye out on, okay, so how is my application contributing to customer experience? How can I make this better? How can I also, I liked Gerben's mention of how do I continuously learn what works better? So how do I not get hung up on my own solution, but how can I also kill my darlings if necessary? And there are, I think it's good to upfront have a set of interview questions that and a direction of where you want someone to answer that fits how you would feel exceptional. So if I want a data scientist that has these qualifications, so understanding how their work contributes to the product, how it contributes to user experience, I will ask for examples of where they changed what they did in order to come up with a better product, for example. I don't know if that answers it, but I think it's again about knowing very well what you want out of someone and what qualifies as good, great, or exceptional.
For your team, yes.
For your team, for your use case, for your, and in my case, that can be highly technical, but if it's highly technical, then usually I'm not the one asking the hardest questions. Then I'm usually the person that does interview for, hey, could we work with this person in our team? But I have a senior data scientist that will then do also a very technical interview. So it matters a lot what kind of exceptional you're hiring for.
Yeah, in general, would you rather hire someone who's lacking a bit on the hard skills but has really good soft skills and eager to learn? Or do you look the other way around, that someone has great technical skills but is not really good yet at explaining themselves or doesn't really want to learn? What is your idea on that?
I think again, this has to do with what you're hiring for. Because as an example, the product that we're now that we build within bol.com, it is highly technical, and I can't use someone that doesn't know how to work at big scale. And the learning curve for someone to pick that up can be so high, like so steep, that I might trade some of the more soft skills for some hard skills. But it also depends on who else is in the team. If you have plenty of these hard skills in the team, but actually what is lacking in the team is someone that can keep the team a bit more together, that also knows how to communicate to other teams, how to make sure that that we not only do our own little thing very well, but that we also expand our knowledge in the greater company, then I would look for someone else. And then maybe the hard skills are a bit less important. So it matters so much what you're hiring for and how the rest of the team looks. And
Yeah, so we'll talk a bit later about a little bit more about it later, about the fit with the team, which is of course I think, crucial. We have a question, I think it's for Teddy. Zoe is asking, is it correct that assembling a team, especially for start and scale ups, is a process of experimenting, trial and error, to see what's the best fit for the organization?
Wow. I wouldn't be playing Russian roulette if I were you. No. Honestly, the thing is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There is so much information out there that can give you the answers that you're looking for. In the startup scale-up world, founders know founders. There are recruiters that know recruiters. I have a very big network of recruiters in the Netherlands, and whenever I would have to hire a new role that I've never hired for, pick up the phone, I'll go to the guys from bol.com, I would be like, Tommy, Michiel, guys, help me because I don't know what to do. And they would help me. They would tell me, do this, do that. I would call the other founder from the other startup that we have the same investors. And I would say, guys, you just build a team. How did you do it? It's with the internet and everything, we have access to all the information that you need. You need to just go out there and find it out. There are books on culture, on how to set up teams. So of course, there is a little bit of trial and error. Every startup and scale up is struggling with hiring and finding. But for me, a startup or a scale up that has enough money to hire a recruiter and doesn't do it is bound to fail. And I'm not self-promoting myself, but it's really like this, because you need a specialist, someone full-time who is going to be aware where to find those people, how to put those people together so they would fit and work together. And still that's not a guarantee of success. So yeah.
Would you then go for like external consultancy companies, or rather freelancers or internals who actually are invested a little bit more themselves?
Do you mean in terms of recruiters or tech teams?
No, the tech teams. So when you're setting up the new tech team, you can, of course, if you hire someone from a consultancy firm, you at least know that at least the consultancy firm want to hire those people, so at least the standard is good enough.
Yeah.
But if you hire freelancers, it's probably you got a bigger pool, but it's more variety. And if you have I can see if you have an internal position, those people are more invested in the startup because they really join. I'm going to join the startup and I'll be here for the next many years.
Yeah.
So what would you as a recruiter? What have you seen happen most?
Absolutely, permanent employees. It's incredibly, your first 30 employees in a startup, your heart and soul of the company. Yeah. They will make it or break it. And those are the people that are going to give everything for your company. So you have to have people that are going to do that. And I've worked with consultancy. I've worked in a consultancy myself, and I know that the knowledge that a consultancy can bring is great, as well as a freelancer. But really, if you're going to be building those first 100, 150 people, I would advise always to hire permanently. And it's possible to find talent within 1.5 to 2 months. So if you do it on time and if you have the right people, so a recruiter who really understands what you're looking for and helps you, you can build teams very quickly as well. So you wouldn't have to outsource it. But then in a case where we would have, like, let's say 150 employees, and then we would need to, I've worked with some of my clients that outsourced in a consultancy, the DevOps side of the work, because they decided they didn't want to have a team. Others would outsource the website building because the website is not their main product. So at some point, it's quite handy to have a consultancy or outside team, let's say, to help you out. But in the beginning, not.
Yeah, because I also see potential for, well, not consultancy as outsourced, like somewhere there are consultants working on a product, but more like, okay, just like we had a discussion about what kind of team do you actually need that you can have, which are projects we also did with Big Data Republic. As you come to the company, they don't do data science yet. We have this exploratory part, like proof of value, or first a collection and ideation, and then proof of value. And when they start industrializing it or making it more integrated, that you then actually, we can actually help hiring the people. And we also done it for previous clients that actually, obviously this is a promise for, we actually should continue this route, but that find people who actually suit you as a company to actually stay there, because we usually consultants are, they want more variety, so after a while they'll leave anyway.
Yeah.
But we can actually help find the right profile, but then we do the, for example, skills assessment, and then someone else does the cultural match, and then we go off and leave the team go on their own.
I think that's very interesting, and it's definitely something that that could help, especially filling that gap when you don't have anyone in-house who can evaluate if this is a good data scientist or not. But unfortunately, very often those services are connected to quite a big budget. And what I know from my clients is that they barely have budget to hire a permanent employee, let alone a consultancy.
Yeah, since you're in the skill and startup world, of course, that's a huge problem, I think.
Yeah.
But it's actually interesting that you're saying this, Gerben, because we have a question from the audience about this, like making the transfer from having helped a company building their data infrastructure or their first data best practices, and now is in a position of helping them hire their first he's looking for advice, like how do you do that? How do you make that transfer? How do you transfer your knowledge to these people and find the right person to take over?
Yeah, so the knowledge transfer always is, of course, really challenging. So I would advise to do like a handover, okay, like 1 week where the new person comes in, and then you just hand it over, explain it, and then you're off. But I think the best way to transfer knowledge is to collaborate with each other in one team, build it together, and that one, for example, externals slowly scale down and more responsibilities are put on the internal members. Also, what I usually do with my consultancy projects, I'm in the team, I might introduce some new techniques, but after exploring those new areas, then try, okay, now actually I have to tie my hands a bit to let the others really force them to work with the things I introduced, so that I actually know when I'm gone, they can continue to work on their own. So in short, there would be a transfer period in which you collaborate, and then slowly, instead of like really short period.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I think it does. Otherwise, we'll hear from Nick, I'm sure. Thank you. So before we move a little bit more into the culture and keeping people on your team, because that's something I really want to talk about, there's one question from Ryan as well in the chat, which is interesting, I think, because if you're assembling a data team, how do you decide who is in that team and what should be a separate team? Like there's, of course, so many subjects in the data field. There's the collection part, the data science, but do you guys believe in mixed teams with all the data people together, or mixed teams with the business? What do you think a good data team looks like? Marika, you can start.
I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but again, I guess it depends on what problem you're trying to have your team solve. And I think it also matters a lot at what scale your company operates. Because if you're in a 15-person startup, I don't think you want to hire a data gathering team and a team of, I mean, that doesn't make sense. You need someone that combines all these things in one person. But and personally, I've worked mostly in software product companies, and it's kind of all the rage to try and have as many people that you need in order to create a better software product in one team. So the multidisciplinarity is a big thing, and also if I look at the team that I currently work with, it has a range of people from hardcore data scientists to more software engineering and anything in between. And we also have regular, for example, user experience people joining us. So business and IT joined together to come up with the best solution for particular problems.
Also, for example, the data warehousing, or are they more in the IT
no.
department?
No, so that's possibly the only exception. But I would suggest to keep them very, very close, because I've seen it gone very wrong. If you try to hire a data team that doesn't know what data is there and how the data is being created and where, if you don't know what's in the data, you cannot use it to create product, basically. So you need to know what's there and the granularity of it and that kind of thing. And also, yeah, I don't think you need them in your team necessarily, but you need to be very, very aware of what data is where and how it's being processed and where it ends up in a way that you can use it.
Right.
Yeah, if I may add, I would also look a lot at the maturity of the company, because if nothing is standardized, like no platforms are available, then then the team, which should be self-serving, should have all skills in it. But actually, at some moment, maybe data warehousing part is standardized, it's working in a normal way, everyone knows it. Then you can have a separate data warehouse team. Maybe at some moment, the running machine learning models in production actually have after a few projects, you've got a standard way of doing that. Then you can actually say, well, actually, just make it a platform team, which it makes it easy for everyone to serve models, and then have the team. Then to be a self-serving team, you don't need the platform side, at least a part of the platform side anymore. So then actually the self-serving team can be more specialized. And I think that works for all aspects. So maybe at certain moment, change something, the user interface is done by some automatic way, then you don't need user experience people anymore, because then, and that way, the more mature and the more standardized and the more platforms a company creates internally, the less skills you need in the specific team.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. We have a question about the hiring, like in terms of skills, and I'll get back to that in the end, because for now I really want to move to the culture part of the data team. Teddy, you, I think, are really experienced in this. You speak a lot about this as well in public. How do you create a safe and good culture, and what is and are there any specifics for data science teams in your experience that are important?
Oh, where to start? I think especially because, again, I'm working mostly with startups and scale-ups. What I see is that usually the culture starts around the founders, and then it starts growing towards the employees. Very often you would see that the founders have a very strong feeling for what the culture is, what the values are, and then it starts radiating towards the rest of the employees. I think that actually the most important thing for having a healthy culture in a company is transparency. I've seen it a lot of times going wrong because of the lack of transparency. And although we know that it's not possible to share everything within a company and all the numbers and everything what is going on, I can definitely see a trend that companies that tend to overshare have more trust from the side of the employees than the rest of them. Culture is not your ping pong table, your Friday drinks, and I don't know what extra free day you're gonna get if you, I don't know, do what. Culture is the way people act in your company, the way they feel, and then the way they work together towards the mission and the future of the company. And if you want to foster that, if you want to make it grow, you have to listen to your employees and come up with activities that they want to. So what I've seen a lot is things like HR or the founders would come up with the cultural values, and then they would present them, for example. And I'm talking now about cultural values because this is something that really represents verbally a lot the culture of a company. and then it would come top down, and then half of the employees wouldn't really know them or feel them or anything. So what I would always suggest is to do it together with employees, or even let the employees come up with them through workshops. I've done that with a couple of my clients very successfully, and you would see that the employees would start talking to each other in terms of the employees. You know, there would be, include that in your evaluation, in anything, what you do, recruitment, or the way you talk to each other. Always use that, because this is the basics of how to do it. And there is no difference between a data science team or a recruitment team or any other team, because supposedly we're all equal on the work floor. And it doesn't matter if you're a manager or employee, especially the managers or the C-levels have to lead by example when it comes to culture, which is also something that doesn't happen very often, unfortunately. But this is how you maintain good culture. And all those extras next to it with the Friday drinks and everything are just a really nice way to celebrate each other.
And do you then see, because you say, okay, we're all equal, but do you see when you work with data professionals, do you see needs that they have in terms of a culture that's really specific for them or for the tech teams?
Well, there is a very common generalization about tech teams, that they're slightly more introvert than other teams, and then they prefer to work from home, and all those kind of things. I don't like that generalization, because I know a lot of fantastic data scientists that rock festivals, and I know others that rather not go to the office but work at home. So in terms of needs, I really look individually at what the employees would need and want, and then look if we can connect that somehow with the culture. So if your culture of the company is saying we're better together, and if you notice that there are people in the team that don't really live that, then you might have made a mistake while you were hiring.
Yes, that makes sense, and it happens every once in a while, right?
Yeah.
What do you think, Marika? Do you agree with this, or do you actually see specific needs with your with the data people in your teams?
I see specific needs for people in my team. I'm not sure whether that's because they're data people or not. I recognize the generalization. But I also disagree. So I also know a lot of extroverted data scientists. So I think it's up to understanding what's kind of in the DNA of the company. Like how do all of these people like working together, and does the way that my team works, does that fit? But at the same time, you will always have very particular needs for a group of people. Like no team is the same. So it's not like the one data science team works in this way, so you can just slap the culture onto the other one and it will magically work. So I agree with that, that you need to listen to, okay, who are these people how do they work together? Where do they struggle? How do we, I think in the end, it boils down to making sure that that there is a safe place to discuss this kind of thing, and also that you're able to be open and transparent about, hey guys, we agreed that from a cultural perspective we want to do things together, for example, but I noticed you're in this project you weren't doing that. You need to be able to have that discussion. Doesn't mean that you need to flip the team or send someone home or go, you were a bad hire. But it does mean that you need to be able to openly discuss this kind of thing, or like, hey, we notice that we get into a lot of friction when we talk, I don't know, code standards, or where does that come from? Why do we have these conversations, and how can we make sure that we create a place where everyone has something to offer to the team and that we all feel good about being in.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, yeah, it's like you're saying, it's super personal. Yes is now asking, like, do you need a mix of introvert and extrovert? I think it's, like you already said, it depends on the team and the what it's what the team has to deliver as well, and the company culture, I would say. But I also think that we can all agree that hiring data professionals is difficult, and it has in the past couple of years been quite a challenge to keep people on board for a long time, right? There's always other opportunities. Everyone, I mean, it was crazy to be a data professional. You would get a lot of calls to jump on to another company. I'm wondering, Gerben, how, for example, at Big Data Republic, you coped with this. How did you make sure that people were happy and that you, well, try to get them on board, try to keep them on board for as long as it was a fit?
Yeah, so what we focus on also already in the hiring process, and which is part of the culture, which you just discussed, is actually that everyone wants to learn. And part of being a consultant, most people choose for consultancy because they want more variety. So the best thing we can do as a consulting company is to offer a lot of learning opportunities and offer that variety and interesting projects where they can learn new skills. So either at the client or at the office with the colleagues. And that makes it for our employees more actually valuable to be part of Big Data Republic instead of, for example, being a self-employed freelancer. Yeah, and so far that worked out quite well. So yeah, what we specifically do for example, every Friday, well, not with Corona, but not at the office anymore, but we normally had like office day at Friday. And then you've got informal ways to learn from each other and to connect with everyone, but also slightly more formal ways of giving presentations about the project you ran at the client or some deep dive in new technology. And that way, the Fridays become really valuable to everyone. And that makes it also for people valuable to stay at Big Data Republic. Yeah, so, but that also then, like, people stay at us because of those reasons. And if I think for every company, there's other reasons why people want to stay there. And I think if you live up to your values and you keep providing that value for your employees, then we'll like to stay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think learning in general is a value for, I mean, a lot of people, but from what I know, at least a lot of the data professionals as well, right? To be able to learn new things. That is something I definitely recognize. Time's going really fast, but I do want to talk about another question from the Q&A because it's something we touched upon a little bit, but it's a struggle I see with many people. So here she says, as someone who is self-taught in Python, has a few years of work experience with a strong academic background, I noticed that most vacancies require a specific master in data science or econometrics. So this person does have a master, but not in this field. And he or she is still thinking that the most important signals for a lot of companies are still the specific degree. So could you guys give advice for someone who wants to be hired in data science but comes from a non-traditional path? How do you get in?
Don't apply at the companies that want that. For me, yeah, personally, this is for me incredibly close-minded from the side of the company of saying like, we're not going to hire someone who doesn't have a master. I was once hired in a company that said they'd never hire anyone that doesn't have a master. I don't have a master. And I told them that when they hired me, and they were a little bit flabbergasted. But honestly, I promise there are companies out there, they don't give a peep about what you studied, what master you have and everything. You just need to go and find them. And maybe this is, then you go and look at bigger companies that would look for the specific skills that you have in Python, or maybe smaller companies like startups and scale-ups would be more interested in your skills rather than your economical background. Just do some A/B testing, figure out what works better, and then go for it. But just when you look at the job description, most of the companies that really would insist on master in this and this and this, you can try to apply there, but if they mention it in the job description, they will just knock you out because you don't have it. So go for the companies that would mention that they want you to know Python and have so many years of experience with it.
Thank you. Gerben, do you agree, or do you, you've worked for a lot of larger companies as well, I think, with Big Data Republic. Yeah. What would you give as advice?
Yeah, I think everyone that also come back to like the mirror side of the perspective I gave in the beginning, like how we hire people, is that we look at what people can already contribute. So I think if you already have a degree and already have skills in some set, find a place where you can apply those skills. And then in the meanwhile, be in an environment where you can slightly move to a different direction. And also at Big Data Republic, if you have, like, you don't have to have a Master of Science in Artificial Intelligence to join us. We also have got, can also come from the social sciences, like psychology. They also have a lot of statistical background, as long as there's some numerical aspect in it. I think a lot of companies are actually willing to take you, even if you don't have the Master of Science in Artificial Intelligence. And if you find it really hard to get somewhere, I think there are also different traineeship kind of ways. Actually, also at Big Data Republic, we just discovered that we found a lot of people who we thought were really high potential, but we didn't think we could go to a client and say, okay, this is a really good person, like Media Plus, and it can immediately contribute values. Actually, we started a sister organization, Vantage AI, where we have got people with industry experience, but not per se data science. And we think they're capable, and then in 2 years, we give them all the technical, like all the data science skills, and then, yeah, and in the meanwhile, they also already work at clients, and that actually works quite well. And there are other companies doing the same thing. And also, I think in larger corporates, they also have a lot of trainee possibilities. You can go that route. And
yeah,
then,
I think that makes sense to just be creative in your first step, because I think after that it becomes easier, right? It's just that first job that you need to land in data science. Anything you want to add, Marike, to this advice?
No, I think there's two sides to it, right? So the company, there's a good chance that the company puts it there just because they want someone that has a certain level of understanding of analytical processes or data or da-da-da. If not, if they put it there because they really want an econometrics person, then yeah, they're not going to hire you, but you don't know that from just the list of requirements that it says. So I would say keep trying, but also try the other route.
But were you always free to hire people from various backgrounds, or did you also keep to like the...
No. And I think what we generally put in job descriptions is something along the lines of, we do put something there, like a preferred master in econometrics or AI, or otherwise a qualitative background. So we do want someone that has an understanding of data, but hey, if you learned how to use data in, I don't know, myself, I have a master's in chemistry. It's not necessarily the background that you would expect me to end up in product management, but yeah, it just works that way. It serves to prove that you have a certain background in quantitative research. That doesn't mean that it's the only qualification. There should be more in this list of things that the company is looking for, and preferably it should point you towards what problems are they trying to solve. And if it's only a list of technologies, and if it's only with on top of it a master's in econometrics, I wonder whether they know what they're looking for.
Yes, I think that's something like, as well.
Yes, that makes it sound like they're looking for a list of requirements without knowing exactly what problem they're trying to solve with this person.
Right. I think that's true. Thank you. So if you do have another question, do it now because we're almost ending the session. But I do have one last question. So we have different perspectives here from both HR, consultancy, team manager, team member. How do you think recruitment and the data science or the business sort of best work together? Because that's always like, how do you create a good hiring process?
By doing it together. I would usually definitely make sure that there is a intake with the manager, but also weekly catch up of at least an hour to discuss what happened last week, who did we speak to, what are the trends, do we have to tweak a little bit the profile, are we happy with what is happening, and all those kind of things. And this is personally my personal preference as a recruiter, but I would always sit around the developers or the data scientists because for me it helps a lot to hear, to listen to them. If I get the opportunity, I'm joining their daily stand-ups or weekly demos or whatever, just to understand better what they're doing on daily basis, so I can communicate with the candidates also better. That's at least
so really make it a collaboration between the two. I think that's often something that lacks.
It's a two-way street, and recruitment is a team sport. It's not the recruiter that goes out there and starts bringing people in. It has to be really, it goes hand in hand with the managers and with the interviewers. And if there are people that don't understand that and don't believe it, then it's going to be a very difficult process.
All right. Yes. Anything you want to add, Marieke or Gerben? No?
Completely agree.
I think you should use each other's strengths. So I think a recruiter is really capable in like finding people on the internet and having like opening up the conversation to see if they're open for a new job. But then the scientists, they know, like, or the not per se scientists or data engineers, they know who they want to have in their team. So together you can optimize profile. And I think the collaboration is key, of course.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a lovely note to end on. People from the public audience are saying thank you for answering their questions. To end the session, I wanted to ask all of you to give a last piece of advice to anyone assembling a team, a recruiter or a data manager or someone who's aspiring to become a data manager. A last piece of advice in assembling a team. Do you want to start, Gerben?
That's difficult. I think it's a nice punchline. I have to think for 1 second longer.
If you already have one, Teddy or Marieke, feel free.
Okay. Well, my advice would be, if you don't know how, or find a professional who is going to tell you how, or go on the internet and find out how to do it, or just call me, hire me, and I'm going to hire your teams for you.
Good one.
Shameless self-promotion. I'm available in 3 days, so if you need someone to build your tech teams, call me.
Sure.
Yeah. And then I could also plug myself, of course, but I'll say it. Think of determine what you actually want to do with your team, like what are the goals. Think about what maturity level you actually are, and then based on those two things, get help. Like determine if you can do it on your own or get help from recruitment or consultancy. It doesn't really matter. Find people who have the knowledge you don't have yet, and in that way, grow a team which really suits you.
Thank you, Marieke.
I have nothing to add to that one. I think, I don't need to promote myself. So hire Gerben or Teddy.
Maybe you have some advice, Marieke, for the people in the webinar who are a data professional themselves.
Find out what kind of problems you want to be solving and how you can get there, and figure out what kind of companies would want to work with you. So don't go for any data science job. Just figure out what kind of problem you like working on and try to work your way into that.
Great.
Can
Thank
I
you.
add one last thing? Sorry to
Of
interrupt
course.
you. I'm a little bit touched about that anonymous attendee that asks us that question about with the self-taught Python and everything. If you want to, you can reach out to me via LinkedIn, and I'm going to be more than happy to look around for any opportunities or just give you an advice where to look at and what to do.
Oh, that's really nice. Thank you. Here she actually said thanks already in the Q&A for answering the question. So I hope that helped. But yeah, feel free. I hope they will reach out to you. For everyone else, thank you for being here with us tonight. We hope to see you again next week when we talk about something different, but in the same topic of building data science team, but it's about management strategy. So how do you best manage both your team and the AI or data capability within the company. So please join us again next week. And for today, Marieke, Gerben, Teddy, thank you very much for being here and for answering all the questions. It's been lovely talking to you all.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.